They say that compassion is humanity's greatest weakness. The Galactic Council believed this when they watched 12-year-old Maya Chen cradle a dying alien predator that had just tried to kill her. What they didn't understand was that human compassion isn't weakness. It's the forge where legends are made. In a universe where strength is measured by claws and fangs, where survival means crushing the weak, humanity was considered soft, defenseless prey. The Council's latest test was meant to prove this once and for all. They would present a human child with a shadow maw, a creature so vicious that even hardened Krillian warriors feared its name, and watch nature take its course. But Maya Chen wasn't just any human child, and what happened next would shake the foundations of galactic civilization, proving that the most dangerous predator in the universe isn't the one with the sharpest teeth, it's the one with the biggest heart. The Council expected screams. They expected terror. They expected death. What they got instead was something that would rewrite every law of nature they thought they understood. The viewing chamber aboard the Council flagship Dominion's Edge hummed with anticipation. Representatives from 17 different species crowded around the massive holographic display, their various eyes, sensors, and perception organs focused on the small human settlement below. The planet designated as Testing Ground Omega, 7 rotated slowly beneath them, its single continent dotted with the prefabricated structures of the newest addition to the galactic community. Ambassador Vexhai of the Krillian hegemony adjusted his ceremonial battle-scarred carapace and clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. As the current chair of the Galactic Council's Species Assessment Board, he had orchestrated dozens of these evaluations, but none had promised to be quite as definitive as this one. The humans, with their soft skin and lack of natural weapons, had somehow managed to convince 3 council species to sponsor their application for membership. It was unprecedented and, frankly, insulting to the natural order. "The subject has been selected," announced Dr. Zithmore, the reptilian head of the Biological Warfare Division. Her forked tongue flicked out as she spoke, tasting the air for the emotional pheromones of her colleagues. Maya Chen, age 12, standard years, human female. Psychological profile indicates high empathy markers and what humans call nurturing instincts. She volunteers at their animal care facility. A low rumble of approval rippled through the chamber. The selection was perfect. A soft-hearted child would make the demonstration even more impactful. Several species had questioned humanity's placement on the predator-prey spectrum, with some radical xenobiologists suggesting that humans might actually be persistence hunters rather than prey animals. This test would settle the matter once and for all. Ambassador Kethra of the Alterian Collective raised one of her 6 arms. "The Shadow Maw specimen. What is its current condition?" "Critically injured but still extremely dangerous," Dr. Zithmore replied, pulling up detailed biological readouts on a secondary display. "We captured it during a raid on an illegal fighting ring in the neutral zone. It has 3 broken ribs, internal bleeding, infected wounds across its flank, and shows signs of severe malnutrition. Even in this weakened state, it killed 2 of our containment specialists during transport." The creature displayed on the screen was the stuff of nightmares. Standing nearly 4 feet tall at the shoulder when healthy, the Shadow Maw resembled a cross between a panther and a dragon. Its midnight black fur absorbed light, making it nearly invisible in darkness. Rows of crystalline teeth lined its elongated maw, and its claws could slice through military-grade armor. Most terrifying of all were its eyes, solid orbs of swirling silver that seemed to peer directly into one's soul. Even wounded and dying, it commanded respect and fear from every species present. "Perfect." Ambassador Vexhai clicked his approval. "The scenario is elegant in its simplicity. A dying apex predator driven to desperation by pain and hunger, placed in proximity to a defenseless human child. Nature will take its course, and we will have definitive proof that humans belong in the prey category of our classification system." Stylith of the Ethereal Conclave, a being of pure energy contained within a shimmering crystalline shell, pulsed with what might have been concern. "Is there not some degree of excessive cruelty in this approach? The child is innocent. The chamber fell silent. Ambassador Vexay's head swiveled toward the ethereal with deliberate menace. Cruelty is a prey animal concept, Dr. Silith. In nature, the weak are consumed by the strong. This is the fundamental law that governs our galaxy. If humans truly belong among the civilized species, they will demonstrate the strength to survive. If not, he left the sentence hanging. The test will also serve another purpose, Dr. Zithmore added, her clinical tone cutting through the tension. Our xenopsychologists have detected unusual patterns in human behavior regarding what they term companion animals. They form emotional bonds with creatures that serve no practical purpose, sometimes even with predators that pose a threat to them. This aberrant behavior may represent a critical weakness that could be exploited in future conflicts. Down on the planet's surface, Maya Chen was completely unaware that her every movement was being monitored by beings who saw her as nothing more than a test subject. She sat cross-legged in the grass outside her family's habitat module, a battered tablet in her lap as she worked on her xenobiology homework. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and dirt smudged her knees from helping her mother in their small garden that morning. The settlement of New Haven was one of 17 human colonies established in the past decade, each one a carefully planned community designed to demonstrate humanity's readiness to join galactic civilization. Maya's parents, Dr. James Chen and Dr. Sarah Chen, were part of the colonial administration, her father serving as the settlement's chief medical officer while her mother managed their agricultural initiatives. Maya paused in her work to watch a small flying creature dart between the purple leaf trees that bordered the settlement. The luminous flitters, as the colonists had named them, were one of her favorite discoveries on this world. They were no bigger than Earth hummingbirds, but their wings generated beautiful patterns of bioluminescence as they flew. "Still working on that report about predator-prey relationships?" asked Tommy Martinez, Maya's best friend, as he approached from the direction of the community center. "Yeah, it's actually really interesting," Maya replied, not looking up from her tablet. "Did you know that on Earth some of the most dangerous predators actually formed bonds with humans? Dogs were originally wolves, but over thousands of years they became our companions. Even big cats like tigers and lions have been known to form attachments to humans under the right circumstances." Tommy plopped down beside her, his freckled face scrunching with skepticism. "That sounds made up. Why would a predator want to be friends with something it could eat?" "That's just it," Maya said, her eyes lighting up with enthusiasm. "The relationship isn't about predator and prey at all. It's about mutual benefit, trust, and sometimes, I don't know, maybe even love? My mom says humans have always been different from other species because we don't just see other creatures as threats or food sources. We see them as individuals with their own personalities and needs." Their conversation was interrupted by a low mechanical hum from overhead. Maya looked up to see a council transport ship descending toward the landing pad near the settlement's edge. It was unusual. Supply runs weren't scheduled for another week, and the ship's design was unfamiliar. "Probably just some routine inspection," Tommy said, but Maya noticed the uncertainty in his voice. As they watched, the ship settled onto the landing pad with mechanical precision. A loading ramp extended, and several figures in environmental suits began unloading what appeared to be a large containment unit. Maya's tablet chimed with an incoming message from the settlement's public communications system. "Attention, residents of New Haven. This is Administrator Walsh. We have been honored with a visit from representatives of the Galactic Council's Xenobiological Research Division. They are conducting a routine study of local wildlife interactions and may be placing monitoring equipment around the settlement over the next few days. Please extend them our full cooperation and hospitality." Something about the announcement felt off, though neither could put their finger on exactly what. As the sun began to set, painting the alien sky in shades of amber and rose, Maya helped her parents prepare dinner. The family kitchen in their habitat module was small but comfortable, filled with the mingled aromas of earth spices and native vegetables from their garden. "Dad, have you heard anything about this council research project?" Maya asked as she set the table. Dr. James Chen paused in his preparation of the evening meal, his expression thoughtful, a little. They're apparently studying how different species interact with local ecosystems. Nothing unusual about that, it's standard protocol for new colonies. Did you see the size of that containment unit they unloaded? Sarah Chen added from her position at the food processor. Must be studying some fairly large specimens. Their family dinner proceeded normally, filled with the usual discussions of Maya's schoolwork, her father's patients at the medical center, and her mother's ongoing efforts to adapt Earth crops to the local soil conditions. But as darkness fell over New Haven, none of them noticed the figures in environmental suits carefully positioning their equipment around the perimeter of the settlement. Deep in the council ship, the Shadow Maw lay motionless in its containment cell. The creature's breathing was labored, each intake of air a struggle against the fluid building up in its damaged lungs. Its silver eyes remained open, staring at nothing, but its acute senses were still functioning. It could smell the unfamiliar scents of this world, hear the strange sounds of an alien environment. Most importantly, it could sense the presence of the small warm-blooded creatures moving around the settlement below. In its current state, driven by pain and desperation, any living thing was potential prey. Its predatory instincts, honed by millions of years of evolution, remained as sharp as ever despite its weakened condition. Dr. Zithmore made her final preparations, checking the remote monitoring systems and confirming that all recording devices were functioning properly. The test would begin at dawn, when the human child typically emerged for her morning routine. The Shadow Maw would be transported to a position just outside the settlement's perimeter, where it would inevitably encounter the unsuspecting Maya Chen. Final countdown to commencement. 8 hours, she announced to the viewing chamber. Ambassador Vexai settled back into his observation position, his predatory satisfaction evident in the way his mandibles clicked rhythmically. By tomorrow evening, the question of humanity's place in the galactic hierarchy would be settled once and for all. What none of them anticipated was that some bonds transcend species, circumstance, and even the fundamental laws of nature they thought they understood. Maya woke before dawn, as she had every morning since arriving on this world 6 months ago. The artificial gravity systems in the habitat modules created a gentle hum that most colonists found soothing, but Maya had always been a light sleeper. She dressed quietly in her everyday clothes, practical cargo pants and a long-sleeved shirt that her mother insisted she wear to protect against the planet's slightly higher UV radiation. She slipped out of the family quarters without waking her parents and made her way to the small observation deck she had discovered on the settlement's eastern edge. It was her favorite spot to watch the sunrise, when the twin suns of this system painted the landscape in colors that Earth's single star could never produce. As she settled onto her usual bench, Maya noticed something unusual in the forest beyond the settlement's perimeter. A dark shape lay motionless among the purple-leafed trees, approximately 50 meters from the defensive barrier that surrounded New Haven. At first, she assumed it was just a fallen log or perhaps some piece of equipment left behind by the Council research team. But then the shape moved, barely perceptible, just a slight shift that could have been dismissed as a trick of the early morning light. Maya's enhanced vision, a genetic modification common among colonists, allowed her to make out more detail. It wasn't it was definitely alive, and from what she could see, it was in distress. The responsible thing to do would be to report the sighting to settlement security and let the adults handle whatever was out there. Maya knew this, and under normal circumstances, she would have followed protocol exactly as she had been taught, but something about the creature's position, the way it lay so still yet somehow radiated pain and desperation, made her hesitate. Her tablet contained detailed files on the known fauna of this world, downloaded from the Council's xenobiological database. Maya quickly scrolled through the entries, looking for anything that matched what she was seeing. The local creatures were generally small and harmless. The largest native predator was about the size of a house cat and primarily hunted insects. This thing was much, much larger. Maya's knowledge of xenobiology, extensive for someone her age thanks to her parents' influence and her own voracious curiosity, told her that she was looking at something that didn't belong on this world, An off-world species, possibly dangerous, definitely injured. The ethical dilemma gnawed at her as she watched the creature's labored breathing. If it was dangerous, reporting it was the only sensible course of action. Security would contain it, and the Council researchers could deal with it appropriately. But if it was suffering, if it was dying alone and afraid in an alien environment, then every moment she spent debating was prolonging its agony. Maya's grandmother had always told her that compassion wasn't about making easy choices, it was about doing the right thing even when it cost you something, especially then. She made her decision moving carefully to avoid triggering the settlement's perimeter sensors. Maya slipped through a maintenance gap in the defensive barrier. The gap was supposed to be sealed, but the previous night's automated repair cycle had missed it, leaving just enough space for someone of Maya's size to squeeze through. The morning air was cool against her skin as she crept through the forest using the skills her father had taught her during their camping trips back on Earth. James Chen had been an Eagle Scout in his youth, and he had passed on his love of the outdoors to his daughter, along with the practical skills of moving quietly through wilderness terrain. As Maya drew closer to the creature, she began to understand just how extraordinary her discovery was. The being before her was unlike anything in the Council databases, yet somehow familiar. It resembled the great cats of Earth, tigers, lions, panthers, but evolved along a completely different path. Its fur was so dark it seemed to absorb light, and even in its weakened state she could see the powerful muscle structure beneath its coat. Most striking were its eyes. As Maya approached within 10 meters, those silver orbs fixed on her with an intelligence that was unmistakably sentient. This wasn't just an animal. It was a person, trapped in a body that humans would classify as bestial but possessing a consciousness as real as her own. The creature's breathing was shallow and rapid. Maya could see dark stains on its fur that could only be blood, and the way it held one side of its body suggested severe internal injuries. Without immediate medical attention, it would be dead within hours. Maya knew she should run. Every instinct her species had evolved for survival over millions of years screamed at her to flee from this apex predator. Even wounded, it was clearly capable of killing her without effort. But Maya Chen had never been governed by fear alone. Instead, she sat down cross-legged about 3 meters away from the dying creature, close enough to make it clear she wasn't fleeing, far enough to respect its space and perhaps avoid triggering any remaining predatory reflexes. "Hey there," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know you're hurt. I know you're scared. I'm Maya, and I want to help you if you'll let me." Aboard the Council flagship, alarms began sounding throughout the observation chamber. Dr. Zithmore's carefully laid plans were already beginning to unravel. "Subject has made contact ahead of schedule," she announced, her clinical detachment cracking slightly. "Recording systems are fully active. Behavioral analysis algorithms are running." Ambassador Vexhay leaned forward, his compound eyes glittering with anticipation. "Excellent. The child approaches the predator voluntarily. This will make the demonstration even more conclusive." But other members of the observation team were beginning to show signs of unease. Dr. Silith's crystalline form pulsed with increasingly rapid flashes of light, indicating elevated stress levels. "The child's approach pattern is unusual. Our psychological models predicted flight response or freeze behavior. This deliberate approach suggests either severe cognitive dysfunction or what Vexhay demanded, or a fundamentally different threat assessment protocol than any we've encountered in other species." On the planet's surface, Maya continued her quiet vigil beside the wounded Shadow Maw. She had been talking continuously for nearly an hour now, her voice a constant stream of gentle reassurance mixed with observations about the world around them. "The suns are getting higher now," she said, gesturing toward the brightening sky. "The warmth feels good, doesn't it? I love mornings like this. Back on Earth, I used to sit in my mom's garden and watch our neighbor's cat hunt butterflies. His name was Mittens. Not very scary for a predator, right? But he was beautiful when he moved, all grace and power." The Shadow Maw's silver eyes had never left her face. Maya couldn't be sure, but she thought its breathing had become slightly less labored. Whether that was due to her presence or simply the creature conserving its strength for a final attack, she couldn't tell. "I know you don't understand my words," Maya continued, "but maybe you can understand my intention. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to capture you or study you or put you in a cage. I think nobody should have to die alone, you know? Especially not someone as magnificent as you." That's when something unprecedented happened. The shadow maw, an apex predator whose species had never shown submissive behavior to any other life form, slowly closed its eyes and lowered its massive head until it rested on the ground just inches from Maya's feet. The gesture was unmistakable across species lines. Trust, surrender. In the observation chamber, the silence was deafening. Several species were frantically checking their equipment, convinced that their sensors must be malfunctioning. Ambassador Vexai's mandibles had stopped clicking entirely, frozen in an expression that might have been shock or rage. "Impossible," Dr. Zithmore whispered, her forked tongue flicking out rapidly as stress pheromones flooded her system. "Shadow maws don't exhibit submission behaviors. Their neurological structure lacks the pathways for pack bonding or interspecies cooperation. Then explain what we're observing." Dr. Silith challenged, her crystalline form now pulsing with complex patterns of light that indicated intense curiosity mixed with dawning respect. Maya, unaware of the chaos she was causing light years above her head, reached into her backpack and pulled out her water bottle and the protein bar she had planned to eat for breakfast. She opened the water carefully and poured a small amount onto the ground near the creature's muzzle. The shadow maw's eyes opened immediately, focusing on the small pool of clean water with desperate intensity. Using tremendous effort, it extended its long tongue and began to lap up the liquid. Maya poured more, then more again, until her entire water supply was gone and the creature had managed to satisfy at least part of its thirst. "Better?" Maya asked, though she knew the answer from the way the silver eyes seemed to regain some of their luster. "Food might be trickier. I don't know what you usually eat, but..." She broke her protein bar into small pieces, choosing fragments that didn't contain any ingredients that might be toxic to an unknown alien physiology. The shadow maw sniffed each piece carefully before consuming it, clearly recognizing that Maya was offering sustenance despite having no obligation to do so. As the morning progressed, Maya found herself growing bolder. She moved closer to the creature, eventually settling within arm's reach of those deadly claws. The shadow maw watched her every movement but showed no signs of aggression. If anything, it seemed to be gaining strength from her presence. "You're not from this world," Maya said, more to herself than to her companion. "The database doesn't have any record of species like you in this system. So how did you get here? And why are you hurt?" She examined the creature's visible injuries with the careful eye of someone who had spent countless hours helping her father treat patients. The wounds were severe but not immediately fatal if treated properly. More concerning were the signs of dehydration and malnutrition that suggested prolonged captivity or abuse. Maya's tablet chimed with an incoming message from her mother. "Where are you, sweetheart? Breakfast is ready." Reality crashed back over Maya like a wave. She had been missing for hours, and by now her parents would be starting to worry. But she couldn't just abandon this creature, especially now that it was showing signs of recovery. "I have to go," she said to the shadow maw, her voice filled with genuine regret. "But I'll come back. I promise. And I'm going to find a way to help you properly." As she stood to leave, something extraordinary happened. The massive predator struggled to its feet, swaying slightly but managing to remain upright. It took a single careful step toward Maya and gently pressed its forehead against her chest. The gesture lasted only seconds, but in that brief contact, Maya felt something she couldn't put into words, a connection that transcended language, species, and even the fundamental categories of predator and prey. In that moment, she knew with absolute certainty that she was not looking at a mindless beast, but at a person who had chosen to trust her with their life. "I'll be back," she whispered, reaching up to gently touch the creature's muzzle. "I promise." As Maya made her way back toward the settlement, she failed to notice the nearly invisible monitoring devices that had recorded every moment of their interaction. Nor did she see the small transport ship that had been hovering just beyond visual range, its crew struggling to understand what they had just witnessed. But she did feel the weight of silver eyes watching her until she disappeared from view, and she knew that her life had just changed in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. Maya returned to her family's habitat with her mind racing and her heart pounding from more than just the physical exertion of sneaking back through the settlement's perimeter. She had barely managed to slip through the maintenance gap and make it to the community center before encountering Mrs. Rodriguez, one of the settlement's teachers, who was beginning her morning jog. "Early bird today, Maya?" Mrs. Rodriguez had called out cheerfully. "That's the spirit. Getting some exercise before the day gets too warm?" Maya had nodded and waved, not trusting her voice to remain steady. The lie by omission felt bitter in her mouth, but she couldn't risk anyone else discovering the creature until she understood more about its situation. When she finally reached her family's quarters, Maya found her parents finishing breakfast and clearly beginning to worry about her absence. "There you are," Dr. Sarah Chen said, looking up from her tablet with relief evident in her voice. "I was just about to send your father out looking for you. Where have you been?" "Just watching the sunrise from the observation deck," Maya replied, which was technically true even if it wasn't the complete truth. "I lost track of time working on my xenobiology project." Dr. James Chen studied his daughter's face with the practiced eye of a physician who was also a concerned parent. "You look flushed. Are you feeling all right?" "Fine, Dad. Just excited about some research I'm doing." Maya helped herself to breakfast, trying to act normal despite the extraordinary events of the morning. "Actually, I have some questions about xenobiology that might be outside my usual coursework." The Chens had always encouraged their daughter's scientific curiosity, and her questions often led to fascinating discussions that helped all of them better understand the alien world they now called home. "What kind of questions?" Sarah asked, setting aside her administrative reports. Maya chose her words carefully. "Hypothetically, if you encountered an injured animal from an unknown species, what would be the proper protocol? I mean, from both a medical and ethical standpoint?" It was exactly the kind of complex question their daughter loved to explore, touching on medical ethics, xenobiology, and practical considerations. "Well," James began thoughtfully, "the first priority would always be safety. Unknown species might carry diseases, have toxic secretions, or simply be more dangerous than they appear. But assuming those risks could be managed, I think most doctors would feel obligated to provide aid." "The Hippocratic Oath doesn't specify species," Sarah added with a smile. "And from a broader ethical perspective, sentient beings have certain rights regardless of their biological origin. The challenge would be determining whether the creature in question was actually sentient." Maya nodded, filing away every word. "How could you tell? I mean, what signs would indicate sentience versus just high intelligence? That's one of the most debated questions in xenobiology," James replied. "Some argue for language use, others point to tool-making or abstract reasoning. Personally, I've always thought that empathy was the clearest marker, the ability to understand and respond to the emotional states of others, especially across species boundaries." The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, covering everything from first aid techniques for unknown physiologies to the legal protocols for protecting sentient species under Galactic Council law. Maya absorbed it all, already formulating plans for how she could apply this knowledge to help the creature she had found. After breakfast, Maya excused herself to work on her xenobiology project, which was no longer entirely fictional. She spent the next several hours researching everything she could find about predator physiology, interspecies communication, and the medical supplies available at the settlement's clinic. By early afternoon, she had assembled a kit of items that might be useful: antiseptic solutions, bandaging materials, high-energy food supplements, and a portable scanner that could perform basic biological assessments. Everything was small enough to fit in her backpack without arousing suspicion. The hardest part was waiting until evening when she could slip away again without being missed. As sunset approached, Maya told her parents she was going to spend the evening stargazing with Tommy Martinez, which gave her several hours before anyone would expect her back. She felt guilty about the deception, but she told herself it was necessary until she could understand more about the creature's situation. The journey back to the forest clearing felt both endless and far too short. Maya's enhanced night vision allowed her to navigate the darkened landscape safely, but she found herself increasingly anxious about what she might find. Would the creature still be there? Would it still trust her? Or had the day's separation reset whatever bond they had begun to form? Her fears proved unfounded. The Shadow Maw was exactly where she had left it, but its condition had noticeably improved. It was sitting upright now rather than lying on its side, and its breathing appeared much more regular. Most importantly, those silver eyes tracked her approach with what looked distinctly like recognition and relief. "Hey there," Maya whispered as she settled into her previous position just within arm's reach. "I told you I'd come back. How are you feeling?" It moved closer to Maya, eventually settling beside her with its massive head resting across her lap. The trust implied by this position was staggering. The Shadow Maw was placing itself in a completely vulnerable position, confident that Maya would protect rather than harm it. Maya gently ran her fingers through the creature's dark fur, marveling at its texture and warmth. "You're magnificent," she murmured. "I wish I knew your name, or where you came from, or how you ended up here." As if responding to her words, the Shadow Maw lifted its head and gazed directly into Maya's eyes. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, Maya felt as though she was looking into a vast intelligence that was simultaneously utterly alien and deeply familiar. In that gaze, she sensed pain, loneliness, gratitude, and something else, a desperate hope that perhaps, finally someone might understand. Maya pulled out her portable scanner and held it where the creature could see it clearly. "I brought some medical equipment," she explained. "This won't hurt, but it might help me figure out how to treat your injuries. Is that okay?" The Shadow Maw studied the device for several seconds, then deliberately extended one massive paw toward Maya's hands. The message was clear. Permission granted. The scanner's readings were both fascinating and disturbing. The creature's basic physiology was indeed similar to Earth's big cats, but with significant evolutionary adaptations that suggested a completely different planetary origin. Its bone density was nearly double that of terrestrial mammals. Its muscle fibers showed a unique crystalline structure that probably accounted for its incredible strength, and its cardiovascular system operated at pressures that would kill most known species. More troubling were the signs of recent trauma. The scanner detected 3 cracked ribs, significant internal bruising, and what appeared to be the remnants of chemical restraints in the creature's bloodstream. Someone had captured, drugged, and transported this being against its will. Maya felt a surge of anger unlike anything she had ever experienced. The idea that someone could treat a sentient being this way, capturing it, hurting it, and apparently abandoning it to die alone on an alien world, violated every principle of decency she had been raised to believe in. "Someone did this to you," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "Someone hurt you and dumped you here. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." The Shadow Maw seemed to sense her distress. It lifted one massive paw and gently placed it over Maya's hand, the gesture unmistakably intended as comfort. Despite its own pain and trauma, it was trying to console her. That simple act of empathy sealed something between them that neither fully understood but both recognized as profound. Maya spent the next 3 hours providing what medical care she could manage with her limited supplies. She cleaned and dressed the external wounds, administered pain relief medication that her research suggested would be compatible with the creature's physiology, and set up a small shelter using emergency materials from her backpack. Throughout the process, the Shadow Maw remained perfectly still, allowing Maya to work without the slightest sign of resistance or aggression. When she finished, it pressed its forehead against her chest again in what was clearly becoming their ritual of mutual affection and trust. I have to give you a name, Maya said as they settled together to watch the stars. I can't keep thinking of you as the creature. What about Shadow? Too obvious? What about Coda? It means friend in an old Earth language. The newly christened Coda made a sound that was part purr, part rumble, and entirely approving. As the night progressed, Maya found herself talking more freely than she had in months. She told Coda about Earth, about her family's decision to join the colonial program, about her dreams of becoming a xenobiologist and exploring the galaxy. She shared her fears about fitting in with the other colonists, her excitement about discovering new forms of life, and her deep belief that intelligence and compassion could overcome any barrier between species. Coda, for its part, proved to be an excellent listener. Its silver eyes never left Maya's face as she spoke, and it occasionally made soft sounds that seemed to indicate understanding or empathy. When Maya mentioned missing her grandmother back on Earth, Coda nuzzled against her shoulder in obvious comfort. Somewhere during those quiet hours under alien stars, Maya realized that she was no longer thinking of Coda as an alien predator or even as a wounded animal in need of care. She was thinking of him as a friend, the first real friend she had made since arriving on this world. The feeling, she suspected, was entirely mutual. High above them, the Council observation team was experiencing something approaching panic. The behavioral patterns they were recording defied every model of predator-prey interaction in their databases. More disturbing still were the preliminary reports from their xenopsychology specialists who were detecting signs of genuine emotional bonding between species that should have been incompatible. The readings are impossible, Dr. Zithmore announced for the fourth time that evening. Shadow moths do not form social bonds. They are solitary apex predators with no capacity for interspecies cooperation. Then perhaps our understanding of shadow moths is incomplete, Dr. Silas suggested, her crystalline form now pulsing with patterns that indicated intense fascination. Or perhaps our understanding of humans is incomplete. Ambassador Vexhi's compound eyes glittered with something that might have been fury or fear. The test parameters have been compromised. We should terminate the experiment immediately and extract both subjects for detailed study. No, Dr. Silith said firmly. Whatever we are witnessing here represents a completely new form of interspecies interaction. To interrupt now would be scientifically irresponsible. We must allow the process to continue and document everything. The debate that followed would later be recorded as one of the most heated exchanges in Council history. But down on the planet's surface, Maya and Coda remained blissfully unaware of the controversy they were causing. They were too busy forming the kind of friendship that would eventually reshape the galaxy's understanding of what was possible between different forms of life. As dawn approached, Maya reluctantly prepared to return to the settlement. She had been away for almost 8 hours, and she knew her parents would be beginning to worry if she wasn't back soon. "I'll return tonight," she promised Coda, who had grown visibly distressed as he sensed her impending departure. "And tomorrow I'm going to figure out a more permanent solution. You can't stay out here alone much longer, especially if your injuries get worse." Coda pressed his forehead against hers one final time, a gesture that Maya was beginning to understand as his way of saying, "Until we meet again." As she made her way back through the forest, Maya's mind was already working on the problem of how to help her friend more effectively. She would need better medical supplies, a more secure location, and eventually she would probably need adult help whether she wanted it or not. But first, she needed to understand exactly how Coda had ended up injured and alone on this world. Something about his condition and location suggested this wasn't simply a case of an animal getting lost or accidentally injured. Someone had brought him here deliberately, and Maya was beginning to suspect that someone might still be watching to see what would happen next. If that was true, then both she and Coda might be in more danger than either of them realized. Maya's third night with Coda began with a discovery that changed everything. As she approached their usual meeting place in the forest clearing, she noticed that Coda was not alone. 3 small, luminescent creatures hovered around him, the luminous flitters she had been watching from her observation deck. But these weren't displaying their usual nervous energy. Instead, they moved in deliberate patterns around Coda's massive form, their bioluminescent wings creating complex light displays that seemed almost like a form of communication. More remarkably, Coda was responding to them. His silver eyes tracked their movements with focused attention, and occasionally he would make soft clicking sounds that caused the tiny creatures to change their flight patterns. Maya watched in fascination as what was clearly an interspecies conversation unfolded before her eyes. "You can talk to them," Maya breathed as she settled into her usual position beside Coda. The flitters showed no fear at her approach, instead incorporating her into their flight patterns as if she were a natural part of whatever discussion was taking place. Coda turned his silver gaze toward Maya and made a complex series of sounds, clicks, rumbles, and what might have been attempts at mimicking the flitter's high-pitched chirping. Maya couldn't understand the specific meaning, but the intent was clear. He was trying to explain something important. Maya pulled out her tablet and activated its recording function. If Coda was attempting to communicate, she wanted to capture every nuance for later analysis. "I wish I could understand you," she said, "but I'm going to keep trying, okay? Maybe between the two of us we can figure out a way to bridge the language gap." One of the flitters, the largest of the three, broke away from the group and hovered directly in front of Maya's face. Its wing patterns shifted to display a sequence of lights that seemed deliberately structured, almost like a visual language. Then it flew to Coda's head and repeated the pattern before returning to Maya and displaying a completely different sequence. "Are you introducing us?" Maya asked in amazement. The flitter's response was an enthusiastic burst of golden light that Maya interpreted as confirmation. "That's incredible. You're actually serving as translators." Over the next hour, with the flitters acting as intermediaries, Maya began to piece together fragments of Coda's story. The communication was imperfect, more impressionistic than literal, but the essential facts gradually became clear. Coda was not from this world, or even from this system. He had been captured during what the flitter's light pattern suggested was a raid on his home planet. Many others of his kind had been taken, transported across vast distances, and used for purposes that the limited vocabulary of light and sound couldn't adequately convey. But Maya got the distinct impression of arenas, crowds, and violence, organized fighting for the entertainment of others. "They made you fight," Maya said, her voice thick with anger and sorrow. "They took you from your family and forced you to hurt others for sport." Coda's response was a low, mournful sound that needed no translation. The flitter's wings dimmed to deep blues and purples, colors that Maya had learned indicated sadness or distress. "But how did you end up here?" Maya pressed gently. "This planet is supposed to be uninhabited except for our colony and some council researchers." The answer to that question came not from Coda or the flitters, but from an unexpected source. Maya's tablet, still recording their conversation, suddenly chimed with an incoming priority message from the settlement's communication system. "All residents of New Haven, this is Administrator Walsh. We have just received word that representatives from the Galactic Council will be visiting our settlement tomorrow morning to conduct formal interviews with selected colonists. This is a great honor and an important step in humanity's application for full council membership. The following individuals are requested to report to the community center at 0800 hours tomorrow. Maya's name was on the list. Her blood ran cold as the implications sank in. The timing was too convenient to be coincidental. Somehow, her activities over the past 3 nights had attracted the attention of the very people who might be responsible for Coda's presence on this world. "They know," she whispered to Coda, who immediately sensed her distress and moved closer to offer comfort. "I don't know how, but they know about us. That's why they want to interview me." One of the flitters suddenly began flashing urgent red patterns, colors Maya had never seen them display before. All three creatures took flight simultaneously, circling the clearing in tight, agitated spirals while emitting high-pitched warning calls. Koda's response was immediate and terrifying. He surged to his feet, his massive form suddenly radiating predatory menace as his silver eyes scanned the darkness beyond the clearing. A low growl rumbled from his throat, the first truly aggressive sound Maya had heard him make. "What is it?" Maya asked, instinctively moving closer to Koda's protective presence. "What are they warning us about?" Her answer came in the form of three figures emerging from the forest shadows. They wore the environmental suits Maya had seen when the Council transport ship first arrived, but now she could see that the suits were equipped with sensors, recording devices, and what looked distinctly like weapons. Subject human designation Maya Chen. One of the figures announced in a mechanical voice filtered through a translator device. "You will cease interaction with the test specimen and report immediately for debriefing." His name is Koda, and he's not a specimen. He's a person who's been hurt and needs help. Incorrect, the speaker continued with clinical detachment. The entity designated Shadowmaw Prime is property of the Galactic Council's Behavioral Research Division. You have interfered with authorized scientific protocols and must be contained pending psychological evaluation. Koda's growl deepened and Maya could feel the vibration through the ground. The flitters had disappeared entirely, probably seeking safety in the tree canopy, but their absence somehow made the clearing feel even more dangerous. Maya stepped protectively in front of Koda, despite the obvious futility of the gesture. "You're the ones who hurt him. You captured him, transported him here, and left him to die just to see how I would react. You used both of us as test subjects without our consent. The experiment was designed to definitively classify human behavioral patterns in relation to apex predators," another figure explained. "Your species' application for council membership required verification of your position in the galactic dominance hierarchy. By torturing an innocent being?" Maya's voice rose with fury. "By manipulating a child? What kind of civilization does things like that?" "A practical one," the first figure replied. "The galaxy is not a safe place for species that cannot defend themselves or properly assess threats. Your response to the Shadowmaw indicates severe defects in your survival instincts." That's when something extraordinary happened. Koda, who had been growing increasingly agitated during the exchange, suddenly stepped forward and placed himself between Maya and the three council agents. His massive form expanded as his fur stood on end, making him appear even larger and more formidable. But more significant than his physical posture was the sound he made, a complex series of vocalizations that were clearly directed at the agents. Koda was speaking to the council representatives in their own language. The effect on the agents was immediate and dramatic. All three stepped backward, and Maya could hear urgent conversations taking place through their communication devices. Whatever Koda had said, it had clearly caught them completely off guard. "Impossible," one of them finally managed. "Shadowmaws are non-sapient. They lack the neurological structures necessary for complex language processing." Koda's response was another burst of what was obviously sophisticated communication, accompanied by gestures toward Maya that needed no translation across any species barrier. He was claiming her as his pack member, his family, someone under his protection. Maya felt tears streaming down her face as the full magnitude of what was happening hit her. "You're not just intelligent," she whispered. "You're diplomatic. You're trying to negotiate for both of us." The lead agent raised what was clearly a weapon. "The experiment is compromised. Both subjects must be contained immediately for detailed study." That's when Maya made a decision that would echo through galactic history. Instead of fleeing or surrendering, she stepped forward and placed her hand on Koda's massive shoulder. "If you want to study interspecies cooperation," she said, her voice steady despite her fear, "then study this. Koda isn't your test subject, and neither am I. We're partners, we're family, and if you want to hurt one of us, you'll have to go through both of us." Koda's silver eyes met hers for a moment that contained entire conversations about trust, loyalty, and mutual protection. Then he threw back his head and released a roar that shook the trees and sent every creature within a kilometer fleeing in terror. But Maya didn't flee. She stood her ground beside her friend, one small human hand resting on the shoulder of an apex predator, both of them facing down representatives of a galactic civilization that suddenly didn't seem nearly as advanced as it claimed to be. High above them, the Council observation team was experiencing the kind of crisis that toppled governments and rewrote scientific paradigms. Dr. Silith's crystalline form was pulsing with light patterns so complex they overloaded the recording equipment. Zith Moore had abandoned all pretense of clinical detachment and was frantically updating her models in real time. And Ambassador Vexhai was discovering that some assumptions once shattered could never be put back together again. "Sir," one of his subordinates announced in a shaking voice, "we have a problem." "What now?" Vexhai demanded. "We've just received a priority communication from the Shadow Maw homeworld. They've been monitoring our test broadcasts, and they're demanding an immediate audience with the Council leadership. Shadow Maws don't have space travel or communication technology. Sir, they didn't send the message." The message came from the Altarian diplomatic mission on Shadow Maw Prime. It seems that humans aren't the only species who've been forming unexpected partnerships. In the forest clearing below, Maya and Koda continued their stand against the Council agents, unaware that they had just triggered a cascade of revelations that would reshape the political landscape of the entire galaxy. But they would have been proud to know that they weren't alone, that across the stars, other unlikely friendships were beginning to emerge from the shadows of a civilization that had forgotten the difference between strength and wisdom. The real test was just beginning. The standoff in the forest clearing lasted exactly 17 minutes, but those 17 minutes changed the course of galactic civilization forever. Maya stood beside Koda, her hand still resting on his powerful shoulder as the three Council agents maintained their weapons in ready positions. Neither side moved, but Maya could sense that something fundamental had shifted in the dynamic. The agents were no longer acting with the casual confidence of scientists collecting data. They were displaying the nervous tension of people who had realized their experiment had escaped all parameters of control. That's when the real surprises began. The first sign of change came from above. A new ship descended through the atmosphere, sleek, unfamiliar, and moving with the kind of precision that spoke of advanced technology. As it settled into the clearing with barely a whisper of displaced air, Maya could see that its design was unlike anything in the Council databases she had studied. The ship's boarding ramp extended and 6 figures emerged. They moved with fluid grace that immediately reminded Maya of Koda, but these beings walked upright on 2 legs while maintaining the powerful musculature and predatory awareness she had come to associate with his species. They were Shadow Maws, Koda's people, but clearly representatives of a technologically advanced civilization. Koda's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. He released a sound that was part roar, part song, and entirely joyful. His entire body language transformed from protective menace to barely contained excitement as he recognized members of his own kind. The lead figure from the ship approached with measured steps, its silver eyes fixed on Koda with unmistakable affection and relief. When it spoke, the voice that emerged was clearly translated through advanced technology, but the emotion behind the words needed no interpretation. Kode Rin Veltar, son of the Northern Reaches, we have searched for you across 17 systems and 4 months of standard time. Your family mourns your absence. Your pack awaits your return. Maya felt Koda tremble with emotion beside her, but he didn't leave her side. Instead, he responded in his own language. A complex series of sounds that Maya was beginning to understand represented sophisticated communication far beyond anything the Council had imagined possible. The lead Shadow Maw's attention turned to Maya, and she found herself meeting a gaze that held intelligence, curiosity, and something that looked remarkably like respect. "You are the human youngling who protected our lost son. The being said, switching to Galactic Standard for Maya's benefit. I am Veltar Kodarin, speaker for the Northern Reaches and bloodfather to the one you call Koda. We are in your debt, small sister. Maya's mind reeled at the implications. Not only were shadow maws a sapient species, but they had clearly been spacefaring for some time. Their presence here meant the Council had either been completely ignorant of their status or had deliberately chosen to ignore it. You're his father? Maya managed to ask, her voice thick with emotion. In the way that you understand family, yes. And you, it seems, have become something more. Our son speaks of you as Pack Sister, one who offered aid without expectation of benefit, who showed courage in the face of superior predators, who formed bonds across the barriers of species and communication. This is the highest honor among our people. The three council agents had remained frozen throughout this exchange, but now their leader finally found her voice. This is impossible. Our surveys of the Shadow Maw homeworld showed no signs of technological civilization. They are classified as non-sapient fauna. Veltar's response was a sound that Maya realized was laughter, dark, predatory laughter that made the council agents step backward involuntarily. Your surveys, Veltar said with obvious amusement, what you observed were automated monitoring stations designed to make our world appear primitive to potential threats. We have been watching your Galactic Council for over 2 centuries, studying your behaviors, evaluating your threat potential. Then why reveal yourselves now? The agent demanded. Because of this? Veltar gestured toward Maya and Koda. Because our lost son found something among your species that we did not expect to exist, genuine compassion that transcends self-interest. Because a human child proved that your people might be worthy of something more than mere observation. Maya looked between the assembled beings, council agents, advanced shadow maws, and her friend Koda, and suddenly understood that she was witnessing a moment that would reshape everything. But there was still one crucial question that needed answering. Why was Koda captured in the first place? She asked. Who took him from his family? The silence that followed her question was heavy with implications. Finally, Veltar spoke, his voice carrying a weight of controlled fury that made the very air seem dangerous. That information came from our investigation of the criminal networks that have been abducting our people for use in fighting rings across the outer systems. The Council's Behavioral Research Division has been purchasing specimens from these slavers, using our children as disposable test subjects while maintaining plausible deniability about their sapience. The lead council agent's weapon wavered as the full scope of their organization's crimes became clear. We had no knowledge that shadow maws were sapient. The classification errors were made in good faith based on limited data. Limited because you never bothered to attempt actual communication, Veltar replied. Limited because you assumed that beings who did not volunteer information about themselves must lack the capacity for complex thought. Limited because your entire understanding of intelligence is based on your own narrow definitions. Maya felt a surge of anger at the injustices that had been perpetrated in the name of scientific research. How many others? She asked. How many of Koda's people have been hurt because of these classification errors? 47 confirmed abductions over the past 3 years, Veltar answered grimly. Most did not survive the testing protocols. The weight of that number hit Maya like a physical blow. 47 individuals like Koda, intelligent feeling beings with families who loved them, had died because of the Council's arrogance and willful blindness. But her anger was tempered by a growing realization. This moment, terrible as the revelations were, represented an opportunity to change things fundamentally. What happens now? Maya asked. Veltar's silver eyes studied her for a long moment before he answered. That depends largely on you, Pack Sister. Our son has chosen to trust your species, despite everything he has endured. His judgment carries significant weight among our people, but trust must be mutual, and it must be demonstrated through actions rather than words. Maya looked at Coda, who had remained silent throughout the conversation but whose silver eyes held unmistakable encouragement. He was asking her to speak for both their species, to find a path forward that honored the friendship they had built while addressing the crimes that had brought them together. "The council system is broken," Maya said, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. "A civilization that classifies other beings as specimens based on incomplete data, that tolerates slavery and torture as research methods, that treats children of any species as expendable test subjects. That's not a civilization worth joining." The council agents' weapons snapped up, but Veltar's low growl froze them in place. Maya continued, knowing she might be sealing humanity's fate with her words but unable to remain silent in the face of such injustice. "But that doesn't mean we can't build something better. Humans and shadow maws working together, along with any other species who believe that intelligence and compassion are more important than military strength or economic advantage. A new kind of alliance based on mutual respect rather than dominance hierarchies." "You would abandon your species' application for council membership?" the lead agent asked in disbelief. "I would abandon a system that measures worth by the ability to kill rather than the willingness to protect," Maya replied. "Coda and I proved that different species can form meaningful bonds based on trust and mutual care. If the council can't understand the value of that, then the problem isn't with us." Veltar made another sound that Maya was learning to recognize as approval. "Spoken like a true pack sister." "Very well, youngling. Our people will consider formal contact with yours, based largely on the recommendation of our son and his bond sister. But understand that such contact will bypass the council entirely." The implications were staggering. If the Shadow Maws shared their advanced technology with humanity, it would fundamentally alter the balance of power in the galaxy. Humanity would no longer be supplicants begging for admission to galactic civilization. They would be partners in creating an alternative to the existing order. But first, there was a more immediate concern. "What about Coda?" Maya asked. Will he have to leave Earth? Will I ever see him again?" Coda answered before his father could speak, moving to Maya's side and pressing his massive head against her shoulder in their familiar gesture of affection and trust. The message was clear even before Veltar translated. He says that his pack includes both his birth family and his chosen sister. He asks permission to spend time in both worlds, serving as an ambassador between our peoples while maintaining the bonds that have proven so meaningful to him. Maya felt tears of relief and joy streaming down her face as she wrapped her arms around Coda's neck. "Always," she whispered. "You'll always have a place with me, with my family, with humanity." The sound Coda made in response needed no translation across any species barrier. It was the sound of coming home. 6 months later, the first joint human Shadow Maw research station was established in orbit around New Haven. The facility served as both a diplomatic embassy and a center for the kind of interspecies cooperation that had once seemed impossible. Maya, now recognized as the youngest ambassador in galactic history, split her time between her studies and her work facilitating communication between species that the Council had never imagined could coexist peacefully. Coda had recovered completely from his injuries and served as both her partner and her protector, demonstrating daily that the bonds formed in that forest clearing had grown stronger rather than weaker over time. The Galactic Council had officially censured the Behavioral Research Division and implemented new protocols for species classification, but the damage to their authority was irreversible. 3 additional species had withdrawn their membership after learning about the testing programs, and 7 others had demanded complete restructuring of the Council's scientific and ethical oversight mechanisms. Dr. Silith of the Ethereal Conclave had resigned her council position to join the Human Shadow Maw Alliance as a xenopsychology researcher, stating that she wanted to study cooperation rather than dominance for the remainder of her career. Her preliminary reports on interspecies emotional bonding were already revolutionizing the field. But perhaps the most significant change was the simplest one. Throughout the galaxy, beings who had once accepted that strength was the only measure of worth were beginning to ask different questions. What if compassion was actually a survival advantage? What if the ability to form bonds across species barriers was more valuable than the ability to destroy enemies? What if a small human girl and an injured alien predator had shown them a better way to live among the stars? Maya often returned to the forest clearing where she and Coda had first met, sometimes alone for reflection, sometimes with her friend for the simple pleasure of watching the luminous flitters dance through the alien twilight. The spot had been designated as a memorial to all the Shadowmaw individuals who had died during the Council's testing programs, but Maya preferred to think of it as a place of beginning rather than ending. It was there that she and Coda had proven that the universe was far more beautiful and complex than anyone had imagined, that the bonds between different forms of life could transcend every barrier that fear and ignorance might erect, and it was there that the future had begun one act of compassion at a time. The Galactic Council had expected to witness the death of a human child, proving once and for all that humanity was too weak to survive among the stars. Instead, they had witnessed the birth of a new kind of civilization, one where strength was measured not by the ability to destroy, but by the courage to love without reservation. The universe would never be the same, and Maya Chen, 12-year-old ambassador and pack sister to an apex predator, couldn't wait to see what wonders tomorrow might bring. Aliens presented a sick feline predator to the human girl. Then something unforeseen occurred. Best HFY tale.